Good morning, everyone. Technically, it's morning. Um, I'm going to be reacting to Inside a Nigerian Death Factory. Mature audiences only. This is from the YouTube channel Mr. Ballin. So I saw this and I was curious about it. I feel like I've read this before. When he mentioned it's a Nigerian Death Factory. But it wasn't called a factory. It was called something else. I feel like I read this somewhere. I didn't look it up because I didn't. I feel like I might be spoiling it. So even though I don't care about spoilers, but I was like, it gets more of a more of a genuine reaction if I don't know it. So, but I will say this: it is late slash early. I have been drinking because it is my day off. And well, technically it's not my it wasn't my day off. I wasn't put on schedule, and now it's going to be. I have 2 days off. Shit. So there's that. I don't know if you see this cut, and then I come back in and I have a different clothes on, or like you see the light coming in the window, like because right now no light should be coming in. It's like several hours before light comes in, before the sun starts to rise. But if you just see a cut, because I just decided to just end the video and go to sleep, like you might see that, but I doubt that. I don't feel that tired because I did go to sleep earlier. I found out I was taken off the damn schedule. But anyway, where's the cut there? All right, here we go.
In 2014, a group of young men discovered an abandoned looking warehouse surrounded by barbed wire in the middle of a Nigerian forest. Today's
And that was
story
their
is
first
about the
mistake going in
absolute
that shit.
horror they found inside of that building. Today's episode is going to be extremely upsetting, extremely graphic. As such, viewer discretion is.
Because I will say I've been in forests, like I've been in a lot of different forests in my life, and I think I was 19, might have been 18. I went in the forest and I saw something just like that. It was like a log cabin almost, but it had like it wasn't completely log. It was like the roof was logged, but the sides weren't. It was weird, and it had a chain link fence around it, and it had like almost like looked like a transformer in there as well. And but it was like bigger than the transformers like I've seen, and it was a chain link fence, and it was locked from the other side. It was locked from the inside, but you could see the lock on the inside. It had one of those big giant locks on it. I remember just walking through the woods because sometimes I would do that, just walk through the woods in certain areas, especially when I was down south. And I saw this down there. I was like, what the fuck? And to me, the weird thing was you can tell because you live in an area where they do a lot of lumber in an area because they plant the trees a certain way, so you can. It's easy to walk in between them. You know that you could tell they're planted. It's not like some overgrown forest. It's specifically planted trees because this is a lumber, just for lumber. You know, and that's where this like house was at. And I was like, and I knew somebody was in there because you can hear like I don't know, if it was a radio or TV or what, but it was something in it. I was like, what the fuck is that? And I mean, it wasn't like scary or anything. It was just like a house with some big, like, I don't know, like I said, maybe it was using something to pull out energy. So it looked like some big power, like transformer, something inside there as well. And a fence around it. So I was like, okay. And it was locked from the inside. I was like, oh. I kind of just looked at it, just walked around it. Didn't walk like in a full circle. Kind of just walked past. I was like, okay. It's just like, cause I'm like, that's none of my business. I don't know what that is. I can't go in there because it's locked. And then I was like, why would I? And then I'm thinking, do I really want to go in there? Because I'm curious, but I'm at the same time cautious, and I'm more cautious than curious. So even if that lock was like the gate was open, I don't think I would have walked in there. But yeah, I've seen something like what he's talking about in where was I at? Because I remember me and my dad went. I think it was somewhere around Bassfield or Prentice, Mississippi. It was somewhere around there, and somewhere in that area. 'Cause we went to go visit somebody, and I just kind of I drove my uncle's, well, my cousin's. He's not really my uncle, but we call him uncle. His 4 wheeler, and I was driving it around, and I'm driving it like miles away from where his house was, and going into like a overgrown area, just rode over it, like overgrown grass mostly. It was probably about like I don't know, maybe like 3 feet high, something like that. It was like, and I was just driving, like plowing through that shit, and I almost like went into like, cause it went through the grass. It was like dip in the dirt, like I don't know what had happened, like it like corroded or what, but it was like a big dip in the dirt, like enough that way if I had went over in it, I would have flipped that ATV. And I just saw this, oh, and I missed it and went around it, and went past it, went and then drove into another field. Then I had to leave outside. I followed a fence line because it was blocked off, and then went around the fence line once it ended. Because I was like, what? I was thinking, oh, I just drive down here, and the fence line just ended. It wasn't even a gate. It was like just a post. It was a barbed wire fence. It just ended, and then I went around. I was like, okay. I just went around that, and that's when I went into the wooded area where the trees were planted. You could tell it was planted for lumber because they were planted a certain distance apart, and it was equal all the way through this pretty large area. And that's when I came in. That's when I saw that house. But I think about it. I was like, that might have been that lumber. Like if they would bought that land or they rented it, maybe they owned like somebody they owned it and they just had them there. I don't know, but I was like, why would they have them there?
But before we get into today's story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place because that's all we do, and we upload once or twice every week. So, if that's of interest to you, please offer the like button a free session of acupuncture, but as soon as they're lying down, go ahead and administer a full body allergy test. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads.
Yeah,
Now,
just do
let's get
that
into
while the
today's
person
story.
is laying down on their back. Allergies. No, you know what they should do? A prostate exam. Full prostate exam. Even if it's a woman, who cares? Like they they got prostate. Some of them internal prostate.
In Nigeria, motorcycle taxi drivers are called Okadas, and in Ibadan, which is one of Nigeria's biggest cities, home to 3.5 million people, there are a lot of Okadas. However, despite their massive numbers, these Ibadan Okadas are actually a fairly tight knit community made up primarily of young men. And so, in early 2014, when two of these Okadas went missing, the community immediately found out about it and was really concerned. And when the police did not appear to be doing much to actually go out and find these two guys, the community of Okadas decided to launch a search of their own. Basically, as they went about their day, driving around the city, dropping fares off, all of these Okadas would be going down side streets and looking in back
Oh,
alleys
college.
and
Why that
checking
sound
all over the
Japanese
city
more
for
so
their
than
missing
Nigerian?
members. But despite their best efforts, they never could find them. Then, on March 22nd of that year, a third
It's something like I noticed that about him. I've seen some of his, like other videos. Because he said he was a Navy SEAL, but he was in the military, and his facial hair. I mean, he's out. He's not in the military anymore based on his facial hair. Even I mean, he could technically still be not with that patch right there, but because his other hair, it could be he could be on a shave wave, which when I was in the military, I was on a shave wave pretty much the entire time I was in because my skin is very sensitive using straight razors. But like he still kind of has a mustache where it doesn't really go past the corner of his mouth. It's kind of going here, but it just like it's so ingrained in him that he still keeps it like tries to keep it like close. Now he could probably get away with this in the military, like particularly like maybe in the Air Force. Cause my mustache kind of did that even while I was in went past like the corner of my mouth like that. But somebody might say something, but it just like it's still kind of it seemed like it's still kind of ingrained in him. Like, I don't know how long he was in. Uh, no, I was on it for like 7 years, but I wonder how long he was in there.
Don Okada vanished. He was a young man named Lanre Sadiku, and unlike the other two riders who went missing while they were at home, Lanre went missing while he was working. Lanre was part of a group of Okadas within the city who all kind of met up on the same city street, and that's where they stayed throughout the course of their day, trying to wave down fares as they came up. And so everyone in that meetup
So they
point all
dropped
knew
one
each other and
person on a
followed
motorcycle.
Lanre. And on the day he went missing, they recalled seeing him driving away from this meetup point with two passengers on the back of his bike.
Two.
Typically, the rides these Okadas would offer to their passengers were very short. They're only driving them just around the city. And so it was very quickly noticed that Lanre had left and after several hours had still not come back yet. When it was noticed by the other Okadas, they began talking about it, and someone said, give him a call, make sure he's okay. And so they called his cell phone, and Lanre did not pick up, which was highly unusual, not just for Lanre, but amongst the other Okadas. They always have their phones on because they're looking for new customers, and customers could be calling them, and so their cell phone is a vital part of their work. And so his phone is off, they don't really know what to make of that, and then out of nowhere, Lanre actually calls this group of riders. However, he was calling them on his second cell phone. Lanre would keep a work phone and a personal phone, so he was calling them on his personal phone. And so when the other Okada answered the
Kidnapped.
phone and heard Lanre's voice, he put the phone on speaker so the others who were concerned could hear what was going on. And what they heard was Lanre, totally hysterical, screaming into the phone that he needed help. He said that he and 8 other people he was with, who he didn't even know, had been
Why would
kidnapped,
he be
and the
screaming?
kidnappers had brought them to this underground prison cell. They couldn't see anything, but they could
Like I know he's a little bit hysterical because you've been kidnapped. But I mean, if that was me, I'd try to be quiet and I'm like, man, I've been fucking kidnapped. Like I don't know where I'm at. Like I don't know. Like somebody just like caught me. Like they captured me or whatever. Like I'd be quiet. Cause you don't be screaming and then the kidnappers come in there. Hey, what you doing with that phone? And beat the shit out of you and kill you. Just. I mean, like I said, he's probably hysterical, scared. Maybe he got knocked out and woke up in a completely different place in a room with a bunch of other people and like, what the fuck is going on? But I don't know. Maybe I'm just thinking out loud. Like it's easy to think like that until you're actually in that situation.
hear people walking above them. Lanre also explained that when they had been kidnapped, the captors had taken all of their belongings, but they hadn't recognized that Lanre had this secondary cell phone, which is why he was calling from it. And so, in between Lanre's frantic descriptions of what was going on and what had happened to him, these Okadas that received this call, they can hear in the background these other 8 people that are with Lanre in this underground cell screaming out as loud as they can, probably to get the attention of someone,
Oh, well,
anyone
I
who
guess
was above
everybody's
ground
streaming, so
who might
it
be
don't
able
matter.
to come down and save them. And so these Okada riders who are getting this call from Lanre, they're horrified and they're trying to calm Lanre down so he can explain where he is so they can go find him. And finally, Lanre, he does compose himself and he gives them really specific directions to this footpath that led into the Soka forest where he said he had been taken. The Soka forest was a very dense stretch of wilderness right on the
That's
outskirts of
real
Ibadan.
footage, a real
Lanre
photo.
would tell them that he had no idea where specifically in the Soka forest he was. However, he said if you just keep walking on that path, eventually you'll hear us calling out from underground and you can come and save us. And so as the riders turned on their bikes and they got ready to head out and go rescue their friend, they told Lanre to stay on the line. Let us keep talking to you until we find you. But as they're telling him that, his phone abruptly cuts out.
Oh,
And when they
see,
tried calling him back, his phone was
they
off.
got him.
About 40 Okadas from Lanre's meetup spot
40,
took off
damn,
together and sped down
rolling
city
deep.
streets until they hit this major highway that would take them out of the city. And then once they were out of the city, they went down this other road that brought them right towards the Soka forest. And then as this road put them right up against the tree line on their left side of the Soka forest, they all began looking for the two burned out cars that Lanre had said marked the beginning of this footpath they were looking for. And so, sure enough, they find these burned out cars, they park all their bikes off on the shoulder of the road, and they quickly realize that this really is a footpath only. There's no way they can get their motorcycles onto the path, not only because the burned out
Damn,
cars
is
are blocking
that
the
thing?
way, but because the path itself is so overgrown
Uh,
with vegetation. I mean, they can barely see the
yeah,
path
that's
if they
definitely
want
like
to
a
drive
that's
something
barely a
down. And so the
footpath.
men leave their bikes by the side of the road, and then unarmed, they walk past the burned out cars onto this path. And then because it was so narrow, they had to walk
And like
more
you
or less
pointed
in
out,
a single
unarmed.
file line into the Soka forest. And
Made me
so
feel
as
like
these
something's
men are
gonna happen.
basically marching
Where
into
they
the woods,
need to
they're
be
not making
armed.
any sound because again, they're trying to listen for the sound of their friend and the other people that have been taken
Oh, this is
captive
real footage
somewhere
of this.
underground. And so they're silently marching through this forest when all of a sudden the guy at the front of the line thinks he hears something way up ahead. And so he holds his hand up to stop the line. And they all stop and they're trying to listen. And then all of a sudden, about 50 feet ahead of them through the trees, this man they didn't recognize suddenly jumped out from behind a tree. He yelled something at them, and then he raised his gun and began firing in their direction.
Oh
The 40
shit.
Okadas immediately turn around and just sprint back down the path, right back out to the road,
Ooh, that
drop
gotta
on
be
their bikes, and they
crazy.
peel back out towards the city. When they finally get back to the meetup spot, they had
I'm surprised nobody got trampled. Because if you on basically a footpath, where you have to, where you're forced to walk single file, and there's 40 people walking on this footpath, you would think like if someone starts shooting and you have to turn around and start running. Of course, the people up front gonna be notified at first. Now, everyone's probably gonna hear you because you're in a forest and a distinct sound of gunfire rings out. But the people in the back gonna hesitate. What is that? And then you look forward to see like a bunch of people running towards you, and you can't. People are not gonna run single file back towards you. So I'm surprised that no one got trampled. But like that will be terrifying. Like I said, I'm surprised no one got trampled in that situation. But ain't no telling. People probably just like, well, fuck this, and got off the path and ran like into the brush and probably just ran through the brush, but stayed parallel to the path. Because I know I would do that. Like fuck that. If you're in my way, like I'm not gonna trample you. I'm gonna jump off them and just run next to it if I
all
can.
originated from,
Depends on
they
how
realize
dense it
they
is.
can't just leave Lanre and the other people he was with out to dry. They have to go back and rescue them. They considered calling the police, but given the lackluster response to the
Police ain't
finding the missing
shit in this.
Okadas, they realized they probably would have a higher chance of saving their friend and the others if they just went themselves. And so the 40 Okadas rounded up another 60 from other neighboring meetup spots, and this huge posse of over 100 men
60,
all hopped on their
100.
bikes and headed back towards that footpath that led into the forest. When they got there, they put their bikes on the side of the road, and this time, when they started walking down that path,
Dude,
they had
serious.
guns,
Sick. There's
knives,
100 of them
all
there.
sorts of weapons, and they were not trying to be quiet. They were actually yelling like these loud war cries to let the gunmen and any other gunmen in the woods know that there was a horde of angry people that were coming into the woods for a fight. And so as they're marching down this trail, kind of expecting to get shot at by the gunmen,
100 of them.
it doesn't happen.
Sheesh.
Instead, after quite a while, they walk out of the thick forest into this huge opening. And right in the middle of this huge clearing is this fairly small river, but it's big enough that it would be very difficult to cross. However, they can see there's a bridge, this kind of crumbling old stone bridge that goes over this river. And then on the other side of the bridge, on the other side of the river, they can see there are two dilapidated buildings. The one that is closer to the bridge is this small black shack that has a window looking out towards them. And from their perspective, they're maybe 100 feet away from this shack. They can't tell if anybody's inside of this building. And then the other building was much bigger than
That's
the
a
shack.
that's
It was
that's a
this
that's
huge kind
a
of broken down warehouse that had big
that's
tall
that Shack, the first Shack was it a black one. where it was smaller. That's for like basically security. That's for them to look out and see who's coming. That's what I'm feeling like. Cause if you, cause any place, every place I've been, when they gotta look like a small building, security works there. Then they have the big warehouse where workers work. So, and he says it's a small window looking out towards them, towards the clearing, outside the clearing into the where they're coming from. So I guess that's probably the only footpath coming in. Yeah, that like that gotta be like a sentry point.
Cement walls, and then all around it was this huge chain link fence with barbed wire wrapped around the tops. And so this huge posse of Okadas, they come storming out of the forest and they run over to that bridge, which is the one way across. And as they get on the bridge, they're kind of scanning the two buildings, they're not seeing anybody. And then one of the men, they look down underneath the bridge and they actually see Lanre's motorcycle. It's lying on the banks of this river,
Hmm.
kind of tucked up underneath the bridge,
If
as if
somebody's trying
somebody
to
had
hide it.
stolen it. And so
Somebody's
everyone
trying to
kind of
hide it.
knows Lanre is somewhere over here. We're going to go find him. And so the men, they get over the bridge, they go to that first building, that black shack, and they open up the door. It's a plywood door, and there's no one inside. But the shack is literally stuffed full of hundreds and hundreds of articles of
Okay,
clothing
maybe it's not
shoes.
that.
And so after kind of looking this over and not really sure what to make of it, the posse
Hmm.
moved on from the black shack and made their way up to the fence right in front of this huge warehouse. And when they reach the fence, they're kind of expecting to be met with some sort of resistance. I mean, the last time they were out here, they got shot at. And so they begin yelling into the warehouse for anyone in there to show yourselves, come out here. But it was silent. And so one of the
They're already
Okadas, who
gone.
was part of the posse, had brought along bolt cutters as a weapon to use as a club if he needed to. But as it happened, he began to use the bolt cutters for their actual purpose.
That was
And he
lucky.
bent down and actually cut a huge hole in this fence so they could go in and explore this warehouse. And so after a large percentage of this posse had gotten inside the fence line, they began walking around this huge warehouse to try to find an entrance inside. And so as they're walking, the windows that lead into this warehouse, they're able to
It's
hide
real
so they
photo
can't
of
actually
this.
see what's going on inside. It's silent. There's a pretty bad smell, but they don't really know what to make of
Mm,
this. They walk around this structure, and when they get to the very back,
that's not good. When you have like it's a really bad smell and they're taking people. I don't know what this is unless this is some like that he comes about this some cannibalistic shit like or serial killers or something like a group of serial killers cannibalizing people um or just killing people and leaving their bodies there, but you would think they would try to get rid of their bodies so it don't attract animals and stuff like that or people. um but I guess they out way out in some forest. You would think no one will come around here like that, but hmm. He said when he says a bad smell, that made me think, it's definitely dead bodies around.
back, they find an entrance. All it is this big rusted piece of tin metal, like sheet metal, that's propped up against a gap in the walls of the warehouse. And so one of the Okadas grabs this piece of metal and he pushes it out of the way. And then as soon as he did that, a few other Okadas quickly stepped through the threshold into the warehouse, preparing themselves to have to fight potentially if there are gunmen or anybody else inside that might want to do them
Ain't
harm.
nobody bringing a
But as soon as they
gun.
see what is
It's just
inside
about
of this
melee
warehouse, they
weapons.
immediately lower their weapons and just stare in abject horror. According to the locals who lived
Hmm.
actually in the forest relatively near where this warehouse was, they said there was actually another way to get to this particular area,
Oh,
to
okay,
get
it's
to the
another way.
warehouse.
Okay.
There was another path that was very rough, but it was big enough for one vehicle that came in from the other direction. Now,
Hmm.
the locals said they didn't use this path at all. They didn't even know where it originated from. But they said for the last 10 years or more, they have seen one vehicle use this road all the time to get to the warehouse. And it was this black Jeep with black tinted out windows. And they said it would typically show up most nights of the week around 8 p.m. And they said it would just go down the road, it would make its way over to the warehouse area. And then around 9:30 p.m., they would hear or see the black Jeep leaving. Now, none of the locals knew
Hmm.
who was driving this Jeep, although they knew it was a man. That was really all they knew. And they had
It's
no
human
idea what this
trafficking.
man did when he got over near the warehouse. However, for the last 10 years, every time this guy was over near the warehouse from 8 to 9:30 at night, they would typically hear screams coming from that part of the woods, coming from the warehouse. And when the locals brought their concerns to police, the police just kind of blew it off and
Okay,
didn't do
man,
anything
these
about
police
it
ain't
and actually told
shit.
the people, don't worry about it. And so
Don't
over the
worry about
years,
it.
the locals had
What?
kind of just accepted that this man in his black
I guess
Jeep
they don't
and the
want to go over
screams
there.
coming from this warehouse were just a part of life. And so no one
Part
ever
of
reported
life.
it anymore. Had the police followed up on the locals' concerns.
Like when I had people living next to me, and I hear their kids in there like laughing and screaming, and then of course then I hear something like crash. I remember a few times I heard like loud banging, and then hear kids laughing, and then all of a sudden I hear an adult like, "What you do? What did I tell you?" And then all of a sudden I hear like something like somebody hitting someone with a belt, and I know that sound very distinctly from my youth. And then I hear kids crying. Like if I heard that, I mean, I know what it is, obviously, because I know that sound. I know that I mean, I wasn't that bad, but especially from what I heard that went on next door, like it was from the people selling the house when they sold it. There was holes in the walls and shit. So I guess they kids was just really unruly. But like you hear screams, like if I heard screams coming from over there, I mean, I heard like I said, I heard kids scream when they were getting their ass whooped. But like if I heard like blood curdling screams at a very specific time a day, and that happened frequently enough to where and that very like he said from what 8 to 9 or 8:30 to 9 or whatever, and he called the police, and they're like, don't worry about it. I'm like, I would if it were me, I'd probably lie. Like I think I saw someone getting hacked to pieces or something else, just to get the police to get their ass in gear and get and come over like check this out. Like stop telling me it ain't nothing. Don't worry about it. I'm telling you, I hear screaming at a very specific time a day, almost every day, and you like don't worry about it. That sounds like you just don't want to do any paperwork, or you don't want to. You like we don't want to go way out there. Like that's why I would lie. I'm like I saw somebody like running, and it looked like they get dragged back in there or something. You know, 'cause, like these cops ain't shit.
About this Jeep and the
It's like
screams,
damn.
they would have discovered that that warehouse was actually a storage facility for a very in demand and very illegal product. And that man who drove that black Jeep, he would take
Legal
this illegal
product.
product and he would bring it back with him in batches and he would sell it on the black market. When this posse of 100 plus Okadas pulled that metal door aside and they stepped.
Okay, I thought this was some human trafficking thing. Okay, it's Nigeria's African. Are they selling body parts? Because I've heard of this, like with albino people, like people thinking in Africa, like, oh, you get a part, this arm or something of an albino person and mash it up and sniff it or smoke it or whatever, inhale it in some way. It would give you um, good luck or increase your libido or some shit or your sex drive or some shit like that, you know. Like, is that what this is going on? Because the way he just said that made me think, okay, they're not trafficking humans, they're trafficking like a whole human, they're trafficking human body parts. Does that make me think, okay, well, let's just keep
Into the
moving.
warehouse, they were not met with any resistance. Anyone that had been there, any other gunmen or guards or anything like that, they had fled when they heard the sound of this massive posse whooping and yelling on their way in. And so, as these Okadas are standing inside of this structure, surveying what's in front of them, The first thing they noticed is right in the middle of the structure on the ground is this cement slab. It's about 4 feet by 4 feet, and one corner of this slab was
Oh, it's
elevated
to
slightly
catch
by some
blood.
logs that
Okay,
had been placed
yeah.
under it, kind of propping it up, pitching it on an angle. And then just off on
Oh,
the
yeah.
side
I've
of the
seen this
lowest point
before.
of the slab was this wooden bowl that had dark stains inside of it
Not
that
in
was
real life,
positioned
but
in
I've
such a
seen
way
it
that
before
if you put
in
water
movies and
on the
shit.
slab, the water would drain off of that corner directly into this bowl. Basically, it
The
was there to
water,
catch
you mean
any
the
runoff
blood?
from whatever was happening on this slab. Around this cement slab, all over the dirt floor, were bones, some with meat on them. And then beyond the bones and beyond the slab, all around the perimeter of the inside of this building, were extremely malnourished, catatonic people chained up to the walls. These people were the highly in demand, highly
Mm,
illegal product. More specifically, their body parts were the product. In Nigeria, a stunning number of people believe that certain magic potions and charms will grant you wealth and success, and in some cases, infinite life. But the catch is, the herbalists who will perform the magical rituals and give these potions and charms to people that pay for them, they often require human body parts for them to work. And so, human body part factories,
shit.
like this warehouse in Soka Forest, were
Shit.
established in order to meet the
Real
high
video
demand
inside the
of people that
warehouse.
needed these
So
parts.
they
And
just
so, the
throw
way
their
it's
clothes and shit
believed
in
it
there.
worked at the Soka Forest warehouse was the man in the black Jeep. He would get orders from people that wanted specific body parts for their magical potions and charms and whatever else they needed. And he would make a list of those parts. And then at 8 p.m., he would show up at the warehouse and he would communicate with the people that worked at that warehouse. And they would determine out of all the captives they had who had the parts they needed. And then after figuring out which captives were going to be used that night, they would go into the main section of the warehouse and one by one, they would unchain these people, they would drag them to the center of the room, and in full view of all the other captives, they would put them on the slab, known as the slaughtering slab, and they would hack off the
Oh,
required body parts and would bag them up, put them in coolers, and then the man with the black Jeep, he would take those parts and he would leave. And then the person who's just been butchered, if they were still alive and might have a chance of surviving, they'd just be brought back to the wall and chained up again. If they did not have a good chance of
wow.
survival, then they'd be brought to the very back of the warehouse in the back rooms where they would be discarded. Now, the means of
Wow. Like, now I get that people, it might be some people in certain situations where they don't have a lot of money or they don't have the skills or whatever to make money. So they go like this. Like, some people could, I could see some people comparing this to like drug dealers or something like that. They sell drugs in the community and they're trying to make a profit, even though they could very well be destroying their community by selling drugs in it. But there is a disconnect there where it's like, yeah, I'm selling you drugs, but I'm not injecting it into you or making you smoke it or sniff it or whatever. It's based on what you want to do and how you do it. If you don't you don't go too far and become a junkie or what, it's a disconnect there. But when you kidnap people and then you just chain people up on a wall and then you come in and say, I need an arm because this person needs an arm for some ritual, and you just grab a person and pull them off to this slab that he says in the middle of the floor, and then just hack off a limb, their arm. And he said if they can survive it, I mean, they got to be doing something. They can't be just hacking off limbs and then, oh, this person will be all right, and then carrying it back off to the wall. They have to like be hacking. They have to be like cauterizing the wounds or something. I mean, that's not great either. Like now you're just burning the person, but at least that'll stop the bleeding. It's like you just hacking off limbs and they're like, I'll put them back on the wall. I think they'll survive, but he said they don't, and they take them in the back and kill them. So like, cause that just made me think in my head. Like, what if like one of these herbalists Said, I need a man's genitals. Like, oh God. And oh, that made me feel uncomfortable. And they have to just bring him to the side and they cut off this person's genital. Like, because these people can't care. These people are monsters. Like, like if you even in a situation where you have no money and you like, I'm doing this for money, like people who kidnap people and cut out organs and stuff to sell on the black market. You have no soul. Like you don't care about it. It takes a very sick individual to be able to do that. Like people like here where I live, like people who rob people. Some of them they don't want to hurt the other person. They just give me what you got. You know. I mean they will if forced to. You know, but which they shouldn't be robbing people. But they're in this difficult situation. Pandemic is like maybe lost job, whatever. I don't know that person's situation, but they're not instinct. They cannot just walking up to you and just pulling you and blowing your brains out, and then picking your pockets and going and raffling through your pockets and taking out what they can find. You know, it's they just like, hey, give me what you got. Yeah, but these people are just like, yeah, they know they're going to kill these people. Like, and just hacking off limbs and then putting them back on the wall if they live. And oh, like these people are evil. Like there's no other way to put it. They're evil.
Execution varied, but in the back rooms of this warehouse, they found a makeshift guillotine which cuts off people's heads, and
Wow.
they also found a
This guy's
large
so
crocodile that was chained up. And so it's likely that those were at least two of the methods used to
wow.
discard of the people they could no longer harvest
Guillotining
foods.
a
After
crocodile.
the Okadas kind of broke out of their initial shock of what they were seeing inside of this warehouse, they went around and began freeing people that were still chained up to the walls. And in total, there were 23 people that were still barely alive, still inside of this
Shit, they're not
warehouse.
even
But
feeding
none
these
of them were
people.
Lanre Sadiku. And then, after checking all of the dead
Oh, none of
bodies
us
and body
guys.
parts that were inside of the warehouse, and then also right outside, where there were a number of shallow mass graves, they couldn't find Lanre amongst them either. And so this huge posse began looking all over the property for an entrance to this underground prison that Lanre had described being in. But they couldn't find it, and so eventually this posse made their way back over to the survivors who were being tended to
Hmm.
by locals that had come over.
Oh,
And
this
so
is
they
actually
asked
one of
the
the
survivors,
survivors.
are you aware of any underground prison cells somewhere around here where other people were being held? But the survivors either didn't know or just were unable to speak anymore. And so later that day, when the police did come out because word got out about this huge find out in this forest, the posse went to the police and begged
Oh
them
wow,
to
this real
please
footage
begin digging up this
of
entire
police
property.
showing
We
up.
need to find the entrance to this underground prison cell. Lanre and 8 others, and who knows how many others beyond them, are trapped underground in these cells, and we got to get to them. But the police just kind of refused and immediately just demolished the
Man, these
area.
cops
And then,
ain't
after kind of closing
shit.
off that area for a couple of days, the police basically just left and stopped searching
God,
altogether. And so the Okadas once again came together as a community and would spend the
this
next
these
several
people must
weeks
hate
going back
cops.
out to
It's
this
like,
forest and just manually begin digging up
wow, they
all
gotta do
over
it
this entire
themselves.
property in hopes of finding their friend and the rest of these people that were trapped underground. But they never did. And so we don't know what
Damn,
happened to Lanre and the other people who were trapped in that underground cell. We don't know
damn, that made
what
me
really
think they
happened
like
to Okada riders
starved
who
to
went
death
missing
now or
right
died of
before Lanre
dehydration,
did,
whatever they
although
had.
it's generally assumed they most likely were kidnapped as well and probably met a similar fate. We also have no idea how many people were butchered inside of the
Wow.
Soka Forest warehouse. However, given the massive amount of clothing and shoes inside of that black shack, it's believed the total number of victims is easily in the hundreds.
Damn,
No
so
one
they've been
has
doing
ever
this a
been
while.
officially held accountable for the atrocities that took place in the Soka forest. However, a couple of days after the warehouse was discovered by the Okada the posse was back digging, looking for Lanre, when they discovered there was this man who was there who was kind of walking around, acting suspicious. And so the posse confronted him, and it would turn out this guy had several human tongues in his pockets, along with dozens and dozens of cell phone SIM cards. And so,
Wow.
assuming he was part of whatever happened there, the Okada posse proceeded to kill the man on sight.
Damn.
Later on, a woman
Damn.
who was a survivor
They ain't
from the
taking no
warehouse
chance.
would tell reporters how she got kidnapped. She said she lived in Ibadan, she was well educated, she had a good family, she was just sitting outside of her
Man,
house
she
when all
is
of a sudden this
skinny.
van pulled up in front of her, and these very official looking men were inside of this van, and they got out and they told her, you're under arrest, you got to come with us to the police station. And the woman was so confused, but the men were very professional and seemed very convincing. And so she got inside the van, they shut the door, and they drove off. And very quickly, once she was inside of the van and couldn't go anywhere, she realized they were not police. She had been kidnapped. And within the
Mm.
hour, she, along with several other people who had probably been kidnapped in the same way, were stripping their
See, that's why in America, when the police be doing shit like that, you see how black folks act when they be like, no, they don't want to, do with the police because they tired of that shit. Or they like, I ain't done nothing, and they don't want to comply and all that shit. It's shit like this make you like, cause you like, I haven't done anything. Why would I go with you? Like, no, I'm not getting arrested. No, because I haven't done anything. You have no real reason to detain me besides you think I did something. And I've been like held up by police like that where they've stopped me because they said I fit the description of somebody, and then find out I don't, you know, and it's sitting there, look at my ID, I give them my ID. They didn't, none of them handcuffed me, anything like that. But I've one time I had police had me put me down on the ground. Well, not on the ground, but they had me get down on my knees, my hand behind my head, and then, uh, which was weird because they had me put my hand behind my back, and they didn't handcuff me, and then they just told me to just sit on the curb. So I just sat on the curb. It was okay, and then they end up looking and find out that it wasn't me; it was somebody else. That was in that situation. But the other ones, it was just like they just pulled up on me and was like, "Hey, you fit." They say you fit the description of somebody that just beat up his girlfriend. I remember when I was in Mississippi that happened. I think I was 15 or something. It might have been 16 because they said the guy was like 5'8" or something like that. 'Cause I could hear them because one of the deputies, he said, "What is the description of the guy again?" Because they stopped me. And at this point, one of them had my ID and he was running a check on it, on my driver's license. And yeah, I had to be 16. Well, I did have a license when I was 15 because I got it 6 months early, but it was 15, 16 years old. One guy was running my driver's license, another guy asked for the description again. I was standing right by the car, so I could hear everything, and I could hear them say it was a guy. He was like 5'8", um, light skinned guy with cornrows in his hair, and he said he weighed. I think she said he weighed like 150, 140 something pounds, something like that. So he was a slim guy. At that time in my life, I was 6'1", weighed about 190 something pounds. I think I probably was pushing about 200. So I'm like, I didn't fit that description at all. Like, you know, it was just like it made no that and I mean I was compliant. I was like I wasn't making like some big hoop ha about it. Even the other one where the people made me get on my knees. I didn't make some big hoop ha. I just said, well, if I just do what they want, it won't be a big issue. I just sat there, and then they end up like, all right, you can go. But I can see why people be like, these fucking cops that don't do shit. Like, I wouldn't even call these motherfuckers no more. What the fuck?
clothes off right outside of that black shack on the other side of the river, and they were told to put their clothes and belongings inside of the shack while they were being held at gunpoint. And then once they were naked, they were promptly marched into that warehouse where virtually everyone around her would be butchered and killed.
These people are evil.
So that's going to do it, guys. If you got something out of today's episode and you haven't done this already, please offer the like button a free session of acupuncture. But as soon as they're lying down, just give them
Free
a full body
session
allergy test.
acupuncture.
Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss
I've never
any
taken an
one or
allergy
two video
test. My
uploads. We
brother
now have
has,
a podcast called the Mr. Ballin Podcast,
but
where we
that's because he developed an allergic reaction later in his life. So he was like, "What else am I allergic to?" So he took an allergy test. But those people are evil. Anybody who does some shit like that, I don't care how in dire straits you are, how poor you are, whatever. You go to the point where I'm going to start kidnapping people and just chopping off body parts to sell. I mean, you just as bad as someone who kidnaps somebody and sells the whole human in human trafficking. You're an evil person. You deserve the worst punishment in my eyes. Like people like that, you don't care about human beings. You at a point like you either like I don't know, like I said, if you are at a point where you just so low in your life where I gotta do something and you go to that, like people who get to a low point and they start robbing people or whatever. But now if you like people who rob people, if you at a point where you're like steal park cars or something like that, you know how to hotwire cars or whatever, or you look at and see when people leave their home and you know that no one's in there, you break in. But if you're the type of person that will break into a home knowing people are there, you are evil as well because you know that it's somebody there and you are intentionally doing that because you, I don't know, you're trying to get the max amount of money that I can steal their wallets or whatever. It's like you are an evil person. Like that's just like you don't care about anybody else. Like you don't like I can't because I can't really say you have a cold because you're a thief, but at least some thieves are like, hey, I don't want to hurt anybody. I just want your money. I just want your valuables. If I can get that without interacting with you, perfect. But if you go out of your way, like people who knock on people's doors and trying to get them to open their door so they can rush in and then rob them, even though they might not have the intent of hurting that person, but you robbing you want that person to be there. So you're like, well, I can get more money or I can get their credit cards or debit cards or whatever because they're home, just and then these fuckers like kidnapping people over some bullshit. I mean, it's a belief that they think like, oh, this person uses this body part to do some ritual and it brings immortality or good luck or an increased libido or something like or penis enlargement. I don't know, like what? It's the same thing they talk about with people with animals. Like, oh yeah, we need to cut off a rhinoceros horn, just shave it down, and that heals you from all ailments or some shit, or gives you a strong libido, or increases your I don't know what specifically for that, or like even elephant tusk. But I think those are just probably just valuable because it's just ivory. But the rhinoceros, I have heard they use that and shave it down. And some people like I don't know inhale the dust or some shit like that. But it's just in. I know it could be like it's basically like a religious thing, but it's just is actual proof in this that you kill an albino and you know take their bones and turn them into powder and inhale them. Does that increase something like what does that do? And it's like, and it is like, okay, well, I don't know if it actually did it, but if I do it more, maybe then it'll work. So now I need to kill more albinos. Like, what? Maybe this shit just don't work. I mean, you can't just be like, well, if I have faith, keep believing it, it'll be true. Like, dude, you're insane. Like, like that, but like your people might believe this thing or whatever, but it's not true. Like, and even let's say even if it was, do you really think it's okay to kill this person or this animal for that specific reason? Like, it's not even sustenance. Like, you're not even killing to eat it. Like, you're killing just to get this horn to increase your libido or cure, your sinus or some shit. Like, it's something that's so minuscule. Like, it's not worth just killing this animal and taking a horn or tusk or hooves or whatever, or killing this human being for some bullshit. It's just wow. This is insane to do that. Like, and I know it's probably not the norm anymore in Africa. It probably was never really the norm, but some people still hold on to certain beliefs and it like, wow, I think this works or I think that works. Even though there's no actual proof of it actually working, but you believe that it works. So in your mind it's working, you know. But it's like, how do you how did that be a thing where you just kill a person, hack off a body part? I need their arm. And you just kidnap a person and cut their arm off because you know they're not gonna give it to you willingly. And just kill them. I mean, that's not just Africa. I mean, there've been plenty of civilizations throughout history all over the world that have killed people, like sacrifice people. You know, I know that you read stuff, they try to point it just like either Africa or, South America, something like that. But they did that shit in Europe too. They sacrifice people. And if you go far enough back, they sacrifice people for different deities and stuff like that. Because they like, this deity needs a blood sacrifice. And then some, they go into, oh, we don't want to kill people. Because, maybe generations that come up like, we're not doing that shit. Like, that's stupid. Well, what's wrong with just sacrificing a goat? And they and then killing this human being over here. But even then, I mean, still, they're not getting anything out of it, but they believe it. But I was like, I don't think they should be sacrificing animals either. But as a human being, I will say it's better than sacrificing this other human over here. But anyway, hope you enjoyed my reaction, everyone. If you did, make sure you hit that thumbs up button down below. Make sure to subscribe when you're here. Hit that bell if you want to know if I'm upload new videos. Comment down below. Share this video. I'll see y'all next time. Peace.